All right, let's fucking do this, Nick. Welcome to the Celtic Cross. This is your spread. I'm going to walk you through this. This is your cross right here, this bad boy. This center card right here represents you. This is the Jack of Hearts. This is an interesting card. The picture I have on my deck sucks. It uses the regular card suits. It shouldn't. But nonetheless, the Jack of Hearts represents a contemplation or unconscious thoughts coming to the surface. This represents that in a moment of eruption, right? The drawing here is a koi popping out of the water. So yeah, it's that moment of something bubbling or something that's been stewing for a long time, finally making its way to the surface of your consciousness. I can't interpret that for you. Again, that's up to you. But then, within the Celtic cross, that immediate state that you were existing in is crossed by this card, the Jack of Spades. This particular card represents caution, yet potential. It shows that whatever that eruption is of subconscious thoughts is being crossed by simultaneously a fear, perhaps, or a fear of, or not even a fear, but just the reality of potential of whatever those subconscious eruptions could be. We are then graced by somewhat Jungian below and above. And below, representing something very close to id, is, of course, the Jack of Diamonds. This represents fascination, wonder, scholarship. I like this drawing of sort of like a suffragette. It represents sort of an erudition, and especially in this position, being below, sort of a subconscious drive for knowledge, maybe, or understanding, and maybe precisely what like college and your like current pursuit of knowledge may be. Above, we have something that is closer to ego, or something closer to construction, or what you were purposefully working towards in design. And this is a incredible card to draw here. This is the Hanged Man. He represents not necessarily a dead man or a man dying, but a man pursuing peace through self-discipline or freedom from distraction, bound in a state that isn't clear whether or not is his choice or not, but one way or the other is implying a sort of isolation or at the very least, a growth period, a cocoon, if you will. We move to the past, behind our querent and their current state and what challenges them, their state above and below their current mind. In the past, you've again drawn a fascinating fucking card here, the Nine of Diamonds, or the Hermit. He's a fascinating card. Represents a sort of sacrifice without regret. Self-care, but a self-care withdrawn from the world. That's a difficult place. One that implies a distance from the world, entirely present, and of course, the Hermit. I love the Nautilus drawing here. Then we move to your future. Again, you have quite the spread here, man. An incredible amount of major arcana. In fact, your past, future, and ego. And your, over here, eventually we get to, the sphere in which you exist within, also a major arcana. So, I mean, a powerful spread. But the Queen of Hearts here is the Empress. A card representing nature, fertility, a draw towards the more animalistic side of humanity, the cycle of breeding, the cycle of traditional family. The Empress is also, of course, a feminine presence. Especially in contrast with the Hermit, it shows something very interesting. Not necessarily positive in context with the Hanged Man and your sort of discovery, but not necessarily negative, of course, either at all, especially with self-discipline and discovery perhaps leading to a natural path to the Empress. But, of course, we finally have to interpret this little cross with this, the magical part of the Celtic cross, the stave. This is, of course, an interpretive tool used to then reinterpret the cross itself. Typically, you take your own time with that. We move from cards representing the self, the world in which the self exists in, the hopes and fears of both these things, and finally, the end of the story which we've begun to draw within this spread. So, we begin down here. An unpleasant card to draw for the self, if I'm being entirely honest. This is the Four of Diamonds. This card is represented sort of through this art, is a card of selfishness, of withdrawal, of hesitation to help others, and a preoccupation with the material possessions, with the material reality, removed from the spiritual realm that the tarot tends to represent. This is definitely deeply reflective in my mind of the card you drew, of course, for your past, the Hermit. And within this is sort of a fearful place. Again, I think the art here is great, kind of a hiding monarch type. We move up. Again, a card I've already spoiled a little bit here. This is the Empress. The Empress is, of course, the King of Clubs, and this is the Magician. I'm sorry, the King of Clubs. A card deeply representative of art, especially the sort of mystical part of art, the like really difficult to pin, skill-driven, intuitive nature of art. Also representative of the tarot as a whole. This particular representation doesn't necessarily do the best job. Maybe hiding in this art is that which I'm not noticing. But in the traditional representation, the Rider-Waite interpretation, for example, the set that my tattoo is from, this card is traditionally represented as like a very traditional magician with all of the suits of a normal tarot deck surrounding them. So the Magician, also, much like the Fool and several other decks, is representative of the tarot as the whole, right? But more of a direct, skill-driven, interpretive version of the tarot. Especially as an artist who's learning to learn art, structurally, and as someone who's moving forward as art as a career, it's an important card. Move up. This is a very complicated place within the spread. A placement that can bring, quite a bit of complication. This is hopes and dreams. So something that is easily inverted at any point. And you've drawn an interesting card here. One that represents in the Minor Arcana a passionate conversation or debate. It represents conflict, but not necessarily violent conflict, right? Intellectual conflict. One that is meant to challenge, to change. In the context of hopes and fears, it's a fascinating card, especially again in the context of your above and below. The fact that you got Hanged Man, a card really designed to represent self-discipline, training, moving beyond the immediate and a focus on the self, in tandem with this card, hopes and fears involving a transformative conversation and debate. And in context with this, again, a card highly representing, erudition and pursuit of new knowledge and that sort of thing. It's a complicated draw, right? And finally, the final card of your entire spread, the Ten of Diamonds. This is, I'm going to be honest, it's sort of a horrifying card to draw in your finale. When I drew it, I'm not saying I shuddered, but interesting. It's a card representing a choice of security over risk, of enjoyment of wealth, of abandonment of everything that cards like this bad boy. And, this bad boy. Well, not necessarily, but it's a card that represents settling to me. It's a medium end. It's not a bad end. It just shows that perhaps at the end of whatever is here, in the context of the relationships that lie before you, whatever lies at the end is this. Not necessarily the choice that you've made, but the choice of security over all of the dangerous things beyond. So, in the context with the rest of your spread, of course, it shows, to me at least, an artist self-focused for a moment, about to step back into a reality of caution and difficulties, leading towards what may be a choice of simplicity, instead of a world of complicated, divisive indecipherability. So there you go. 10 fucking minutes of this garbage. Hope you enjoyed.